Hello, online world. I'm Amber Yang, and it's my pleasure to be in conversation with the brilliant and multi-talented Mark Bailey, who just accomplished an incredible writing milestone. Back in 2018, he set an ambitious goal for himself to write 10 science fiction novels in 5 years. And fast forward until now, 5 years later, and he's just finished his 10th novel, 321 Incident. So Mark is with me today to talk about his books and the personal insights and experiences that have shaped his writing journey. And for those new to his work, Mark is a Minneapolis-based science fiction writer, a lover of crypto, and an artist of many forms. And one of my favorite works of art by him is his oil painting collection of 19 historically significant figures, all who played an important role in the evolution of culture. Mark regularly writes articles for the crypto industry, maintains a blog on Hive, and summarizes news reports for a nonprofit information service, wanttoknow.info, where he and I actually work together in exposing historical and current cover-ups and corruption and educating the public in support of personal and global transformation. And something I deeply respect about Mark is how he uses art as a vehicle for such transformation. So welcome, Mark. Thanks for being here with me today.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Before we begin, I would love to share a brief excerpt from your latest novel, The 321 Incident. And I remember reading this part for the first time and getting total goosebumps. So it's actually great to be sharing it with you now and whoever's watching this. Looking around to see how people were reacting, Peter found only blank faces. "My message is this," he continued, feeling his confidence growing. "The system is a murderous machine, and it's coming for anyone who acts against it. The latest killings will inspire an equally harmful resistance movement, like a war, but with no central organization behind it. Now, I don't want any part of that. I don't want anyone I love to be involved in it. And I think everyone in this room can agree that peace is better than war." At this point, several audience members were clearly no longer paying attention, but most of the crowd was hanging on Peter's words, trying to make sense of them. "The wave of psychological breakdowns, the so-called mental health crisis we've been seeing is just the beginning," he said. "In a society where nothing makes sense anymore, with the medical system focused on 321 syndrome and big pharma profits instead of on human well-being, people are going to be looking to the GSGs for help like never before. They'll be looking to you. So I'm here today to invite you all to get yourselves as clear as possible, whatever that takes, because the world needs you to be there for people, to hold the line against the forces pushing our world deeper into madness. The deaths of the Chicago Nine, as they'll be called, won't go unanswered," said Peter. "There will be reprisals, attacks you can't stop. The system will respond by going nuts, harming innocent people, triggering another round of reprisals, until all the rage that's been building up in everyone erupts like a massive volcano, like a psychic eruption that changes the landscape in ways we can't imagine." "Great," said Horace. "The thing is, this storm will contain opportunities to do better for all of us," said Peter. "It will be very hard, but in some ways it will make our choices easier, more clear. This conference in the GSG community is all about doing less harm. Maybe you guys came here today to hear me say it. Whatever happens, do less harm."
It's just fun to hear that in someone else's voice other than my own.
Yeah, how was it to hear
Great.
it? Given that we just shared a little bit of your writing, let's start off with the basics. Why 10 novels in 5 years? Like, what inspired you to do that?
I've written other books before, written novellas and other short fiction before, but I hadn't written a full-length one. And I really enjoyed that process. And I thought, I want to just write a bunch of books. 10 as being like an appropriately large number, and 5 years as being a relatively insane time constraint. And I decided I'm just going to try to do that and see what happens.
Would you like to share with viewers just these 10 books and what they are?
The first one was called Rainbow Lullaby. That one is about a magical woodland creature called a lagu and a friendship between that creature and a magical tree. From there, the book gets weirder and weirder until you realize that these magical creatures are in fact attached to real humans who eventually meet up. The second one was called the Osterman Method,
Mm.
and that one goes deeper into the stories of the characters from Rainbow Lullaby and also introduces some new characters and some strange technological stuff, like the possibility of an EMP attack on a major financial center and stuff like that. Now, my third one was called One Man Embassy, and this one tells the story of Hekwa, who's an extraterrestrial who flees his home planet Janya to come to Earth and make a new life. And and he has a hilarious time of it. I try to include humor in everything, but this one was the humor was front and center.
It's
And
true.
starts out living by the river and eating bugs out of logs, and gradually, finds a place to stay, and then figures out he can sell his technologies to companies here, and so he starts making some money, and then he has all kinds of crazy adventures from there. My fourth book is called Flying Saucer Shenanigans, which is a sequel to One Man Embassy, where a woman named Laika from Hekwa's home planet is sent to Earth to assassinate Hekwa. Once she gets to Earth, she can't find him, of course, because there's many people on the planet. And
Heck was pretty savvy too.
right. Well, and over time, what she realizes is that the government that sent her to be an assassin really didn't have her best interests in mind.
Mm. Mm.
And so then she decides to just kind of forget about her mission and make some friends and have some adventures. Number five is Blue Dragon, Mississippi. This one is a sequel to all of the previous four, but it's about a blue dragon that lives in the Mississippi River. This dragon can communicate psychically with anyone because that's the power that dragons have, obviously. And so she starts to communicate with a character named Matilda and inspires Matilda to start a political resistance movement. Number six is called Psychic Avalanche, a drug that makes people psychic. The dragon is involved, and Hekwa is involved, and all the same funny characters are involved.
Mm-hmm.
But they start making this drug to make people psychic. Of course, everyone really wants it, and so they make a bunch of it, and it spreads much more quickly than the government can control it. It ends up changing the total landscape of society because everyone can hear each other's thoughts. The next one is called The Paradise Anomaly, a world that's just like this one, but it's not populated.
Hmm.
And it's only accessible through a cave near the Mississippi River. Indigenous people over the years have escaped into this other world and created a small society there.
Mm.
And only one person is allowed to go back and forth through the cave, a character named Utik. He was originally apprenticed to be the person who can go through the cave, but then his master suddenly dies, and so he's responsible for all of this now.
Wow.
And he immediately discovers all kinds of terrible things, both about his tribe and about the world that we know. At some point, a tech billionaire figures out a way to get into this other world and creates
Wow.
essentially a resort there. And so then there's a lot of drama between the rich millionaires in this billionaire's paradise and the native tribes.
I definitely have it right here.
Oh yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. So then after that, I wrote The Brockton Exodus, and this one isn't published yet. I set out to write a utopia. I thought, what would a utopia really look like? Because it's easy to write about a dystopia. I mean, we just have to look around and we can find a dystopia. But what would a utopia look like? Most of the architecture is made of food,
Hmm.
and people are living completely in harmony with the environment, where the currency is energy, and
Wow.
and there's a technology that allows them to look at anywhere and see what's happening. There's zero privacy because at any point you can be observed by this technology. And
Huh.
one of the things they use this for is to observe Earthlings here on Earth. and
Interesting.
learn from our mistakes.
Mm.
So what ends up happening is an Earthling ends up getting pulled into this other world. He's sort of an anti-hero, but then all the people in this world, they all want to make him into something,
Mm.
because he's like the one and only Earthling in their utopia. The 321 incident, which is number 10 that I just finished. What I started with was the idea of what types of events and interactions would actually bring about a radical positive change. The first thing was a big national tragedy, where the same number of people died as did in 9/11. That's like a way to compare the scope of the tragedy with a previous tragedy that we're all familiar with. In this one, it was no external force that was responsible for it. It was all these people killed themselves, and they did it for largely political reasons. So starting from there, I decided I wanted it to be like the beginning to be the worst part and to have it just kind of get better from there. What kinds of actions people might take in response to an event like that, how the government might respond to it, and how things might change as a result. Most of my books have pretty serious sci-fi elements, like a dragon or an extraterrestrial or this
Mm.
advanced technology, but this one, the science fiction was all about the magic of synchronicities and interpersonal
Mm.
connections, and seeing how these, meaningful coincidences and flashes of insight can uh, really shape the way a story develops.
You wrote Small Gods of Time Travel too, right?
Oh, yeah, that
That
was
was
number 8. Sorry, I forgot Small Gods of Time Travel. If I could go back in time to my younger self during 9/11, on the day before 9/11, what would I want to say to my younger self or do with my younger self? And I thought, well, there's probably a book here. The main character, who's actually two characters, his older and younger self, travels back in time to the day before 9/11, with a bunch of advanced technology and information about the future. And then he teams up with his younger self to um, take actions that move society in a better direction. At least that's the goal. What they initially encountered involved doing things and then nothing changes, and then they do things and then nothing changes. Part of what's revealed is that they themselves change, and that's maybe the important part. This book, I wrote it in 40 chapters, and I decided, instead of doing publishing it in a traditional way, I would create a web book and include links to important news reports that pertain to the subject matter being discussed in the chapters. And then I also, for each chapter, generated a piece of AI art and took that AI art, combined with the text, and made it into an NFT set that anyone can collect if you're a Tezos NFT collector.
Thanks for sharing all of that. Like these 10 books, I see a thread of like personal and social consciousness themes mixed with fantasy and sci-fi and technology. So what are some of the top themes and issues that you explore in these books?
One of the main ones is technological development and responsible versus irresponsible uses of technology. In specific cases, of course, it has some major downsides. And so, I try in all of my works to look at both of those things, where I'll highlight the obvious benefits, and then I'll also highlight the downsides and, try to get into what people can do to mitigate those problems. Just another major theme
Mm-hmm.
in all of my works is economics, and how the
Mm.
monetary system works, how the financial systems work, and what alternatives to those systems uh, might exist in other places or be created by us if we want.
It seems like you're really curious about the role of consciousness in terms of social change or systemic change, even on the level of an activist. Can you say more about that? Because that's something that personally really intrigued me and actually inspired me in many different ways. The whole idea that things are complex and that there's multiple ways of looking at things. It really does require that we think differently about our problems, which relates to our consciousness.
The real key to unlock a better future has got to be grounded in, I would say, a radical consciousness shift.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean everyone meditates until they feel oneness and then the world changes magically. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
Um, it does mean getting better at communicating with ourselves and each other about ourselves and each other so that the stories that we tell can more accurately reflect what's going on.
I mentioned earlier, we work together for wanttoknow.info, where we educate the public about, a lot of the deeper corruption happening in our society right now. And we just talked about how you weave some of these issues we cover into your writing. And in fact, what you do in our organization is summarize news reports that goes out to like 14,000 people a week. How many news reports have you done in total?
Approximately 5,700.
Amazing. And I know that your own journey of looking at deeper corruption started way before you started working for Want to Know. You've been on the interface of a lot of these different issues. And I'm just curious about how your own personal political journey shaped the way that a lot of these books came together.
When I read things, especially things that are like upsetting or challenge my worldview, I want to respond to them. Creating a container for me to put all my responses to all of this horrible news that I'm always dealing with and feel like I'm authentically responding to them.
A lot of the topics we cover for Want to Know is on war. This quote says, "The opposite of war isn't peace, it's creativity." How do we think outside the box? How do we create parallel systems to the oppressive systems we live in? For you to be able to write um, in ways that invite in deeper conversations about the deeper corruption we face, while also um, kind of using the best of technology and sci-fi and fantasy to guide those conversations. A lot of the topics you cover, a lot of the mainstream culture may not be fully aware about. And I personally found that the way that you talk about these issues, it's digestible, it's easy to understand, and it's verifiable. So I'd love to see people supporting your work. And I think people can get a lot from reading your books. Viewers, here's where you can connect with him. You blog every day on Hive, right?
Right.
Yeah, so people can find a lot more about you through your Hive blog. And you just launched your new author website, right?
I did. It's
Yeah.
markbailey.love.
Markbailey.love. Incredible. And people can just kind of see your process of writing the books there as well. They can see all your books and where to purchase them and where to read them online.
Exactly.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into this. Make sure to check out Mark Bailey. He's really created some amazing works of art over the past 5 years, and I think the world really needs a lot of his work. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for having me.
Great to see you, Mark.
Yeah.